Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. I still love Chicago Med, but it's not been the same for me since these four characters left. Chicago Med is still one of my favorite shows, but it hasn't been the same without several departed characters. The medical drama has had one of the highest turnover rates in the One Chicago universe, and few characters are left during Season 10 who have been with the series since Season 1. This cast change is not surprising, considering the show has been on for a decade. However, some newer characters have also left Gaffney Medical Center, despite their popularity. As a result, the Chicago Med Season 10 cast is almost unrecognizable to anyone who is returning after taking a break from watching this medical drama. New characters mean new story directions, and Chicago Med has created interesting conflicts by adding characters such as prickly Dean Archer, Steven Weber, who arrived in Season 6, and Caitlin Lennox, Sarah Ramos, who is a new addition in Season 10. However, the series has a different feel than it did in its early seasons, and some characters' absences are glaringly obvious. Marcel was a replacement for Connor Rhodes, who left after Chicago Med Season 4. He was my favorite character because he cared so deeply about his patients and often butted heads with other doctors and administrators over treatment plans. Marcel was also part of one of Chicago Med's strongest love triangles when he and Will Halstead fought over Natalie Manning. However, the most interesting aspect of Marcel's character was his tragic backstory. Marcel came to Gaffney Medical Center to numb the pain of losing his 1-year-old daughter to leukemia. He was slow to open up to anybody about his tragedy or let anyone too close because of it, but once he let Natalie in, he told her everything. And it gave both characters and their relationship much more depth. Marcel's every action at the hospital was layered, with pain, grief, and the desire to heal others all competing for top priority as he navigated complex medical situations. His final storyline was as tragic as his past. Marcel had to decide to rescind approval for a liver transplant for a young boy at the last minute after the child developed an infection that couldn't be resolved in time to do the procedure. Not only did the child die, but his father chose to take his own life. Marcel couldn't bear the guilt and canceled his next surgery, though his final scene involved him promising Maggie he would be back tomorrow. It adds insult to injury that after that strong story, Marcel didn't get an exit scene. Despite his promise to return, when Chicago Med Season 10 premiered, Marcel was absent and someone commented that he had moved to Boston. I was disappointed by this off-screen exit, especially since Chicago Med could have given Marcel a proper exit story by having him quit at the end of his final story, instead of promising a return that never came. Instead, Chicago Med replaced him with the far less interesting Mitch Ripley, whose only character trait seems to be self-destruction. For 8 years, Will Halstead was the heart of Chicago Med. Halstead was the original reason for the spin-off. He was the brother of Chicago PD's Jay Halstead. Will was a rebellious resident who constantly did the wrong thing for the right reasons. His impulsive choices often kept him one step away from being fired, and in many of the best One Chicago crossovers, he worked with Jay to get medical care for victims and bad guys off the streets. Some of Will's later storylines were silly. I hated when he went undercover to help Jay catch a mafia boss, but his constant refusal to respect the rules made Chicago Med more interesting. He was at his best when he butted heads with Marcel, but left the season before Marcel did. Thus, Marcel's final season lacked something because of Will's absence. Additionally, characters like Hannah would never have come to Gaffney if Will hadn't crossed paths with them first. In almost every respect, Will is an irreplaceable character, and Chicago Med simply isn't the same without him. Toy wasn't a likable character, but he helped balance the medical drama, especially during his final few seasons. While his on-again, off-again relationship with April was central to his character, I most appreciate him for the way he tried to keep Archer in check during Season 6. Troy and Archer served in the Navy together, and Troy brought Archer on board to be his temporary replacement as ED chief while recovering from surgery. However, when Troy returned to the hospital, Archer had a difficult time taking orders from his one-time subordinate. Troy was overly opinionated and often tried to control patient care in inappropriate ways, especially if he believed the other doctors were violating the rules. These qualities made him a semi-villain, but also led to compelling conflicts. While the current season's Lennox is a similar type of character, her attitudes don't have nearly the same impact that Choi's did, underscoring how much he is missed. The love triangle between Will, Natalie, and Marcel took up most of her final 2 seasons, and she also got involved with a shady patient who ultimately was proven to be a con artist. While these romantic storylines were interesting, there was a lot more to Natalie's character than that, and Chicago Med lost something when she left for Seattle. Natalie was a pediatrician who was just as passionate about patient care as Will was. She was especially endearing when fighting for care for children who were too young to advocate for themselves. The series has had 2 other pediatricians since Natalie left Chicago Med. Guy Lockard's Dylan Scott gets an honorable mention, as he was also an interesting character, but he didn't last, while John Frost seems like a younger version of Marcel. These characters don't make me miss Natalie any less. While I'm happy that she and Will got their happy ending, Chicago Med's stories aren't as strong without Natalie fighting for children's health, despite the disapproval of administrators and other doctors. Like any devoted Chicago Med fan, I still find myself tuning in each week, eager to see what new medical cases and personal dramas unfold at Gaffney Chicago Medical Center. The show has a way of keeping me hooked with its fast-paced storytelling, compelling ethical dilemmas, and deeply personal character arcs. But as much as I still enjoy it, I can't deny that Chicago Med has never quite felt the same for me since 4 pivotal characters left. Their absences created a void that no new arrival has been able to fill, at least not in the same way. Dr. Connor Rhodes. When Colin Donnell's Dr. Connor Rhodes departed from Chicago Med in Season 5, it felt like the loss of the heart and soul of the hospital. Connor was the ultimate blend of brilliance and passion, a top-tier cardiothoracic surgeon who always put his patients first, even when it meant going head-to-head with administration. He had a fascinating backstory, from his troubled relationship with his father to his intense, and often tragic, personal life. His relationship with Dr. Ava Becker was one of the most gripping storylines on the show, taking a shocking and dark turn before he exited. While the drama was captivating, it felt like Connor's story ended abruptly, leaving many fans wishing for a different conclusion. His departure changed the dynamic of the surgical team, and honestly, no one has stepped up to carry the show in quite the same way. April Sexton. April Sexton, played by Yaya DaCosta, was another character whose absence is still deeply felt. April was the kind of nurse you want by your side in a crisis, competent, compassionate, and deeply committed to her patients. She wasn't afraid to push back against doctors when she felt they were making the wrong call, and she brought a unique strength to the emergency department. Her on-again, off-again romance with Dr. Ethan Choi kept fans invested, even when it became frustrating at times. When April left, it not only marked the loss of a beloved character, but also a shift in the hospital's overall atmosphere. The ED felt different without her steady, no-nonsense presence, and while Chicago Med has introduced other strong-willed nurses since then, none have quite matched April's balance of warmth and determination. Dr. Natalie Manning. Dr. Natalie Manning was a polarizing character, but there's no denying that she was a crucial part of Chicago Med from the very beginning. Tori DeVito brought so much depth to Natalie, who was a dedicated pediatrician and single mother with an empathetic approach to medicine that sometimes got her into trouble. While some of her storylines, particularly her complicated relationship with Dr. Will Halstead, could be frustrating, she was a significant presence on the show. Natalie often brought a more emotional perspective to the cases, challenging the more by-the-book doctors like Will and Ethan. Her departure at the start of Season 7 felt rushed, and even though the show has tried to move on, her absence still lingers. The dynamic between her and Will, in particular, left a noticeable gap in the show's core relationships.